Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are on page 169 of your student journal. And before we begin today, we are going to remind ourselves about dividing with decimals. So my first problem is 1 and 86 hundredths divided by 31 hundredths. Okay, now I'm going to remember that in and out strategy, that this one always goes in, which means it's my dividend, and this goes out, which means it's my divisor. So I have 31 hundredths outside and 1 and 86 hundredths inside. Now what I need to remember is I cannot have a decimal outside. Let me say that again. I cannot have a decimal outside. My divisor must not have a decimal. So to fix that, I'm going to do 2 loops and bring it over here, because then it just is 31 decimal, which is a whole. But because I did 2 loops out there, I need to do 2 loops in here also. And then I can bring the decimal up. So again, I can't have a decimal outside, so I use loops to bring it, and then whatever number of loops I have here, I need to do loops here. Now I can just divide like regular. So 31 cannot fit into 1. 31 cannot fit into 18. 31 can fit into 186. So I might need to take a guess. Well, I know 5 30s would be 150. So I'm thinking it's 6 times. So I might want to find some scratch area and see what 31 times 6 is. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 3 is 8. And I am right at 6. It fits in 6 times perfectly. So 6 times 31 is 186 with nothing left. So my answer is 6. Okay, here is your problem. Your problem is 1 and 14 tenths divided by 14 hundredths divided by 19 hundredths. Okay, so you may pause the video and get that done. All right, and our goal for today is, today I will reason about multiplying a fraction by a fraction. Okay, so in our last video, we multiplied about whether the answer would be greater than or less than the whole number. Today we're going to reason about multiplying a fraction by a fraction. So reason, it means we're going to kind of make sense of what's going to happen when we multiply a fraction by a fraction. Okay, in vocabulary, the most important word is this. Of means there's going to be a multiplication. So when you have a fraction word problem and you see this of, I want you to replace it with a multiplication sign. So 1/3 of 2/5 would be 1/3 times 2/5. So that's the really important thing that you're going to see for the rest of this unit is when it's an of, when you can, not that it necessarily says the word of, but when you can restate the word problem using the word of, then it's going to be a multiplication problem. Okay, so our steps are, I'm going to read the problem, I'm going to draw a diagram, reason about the first factor, and reason about the second factor. Okay, so I'm going to get started and kind of show you what this is going to look like. Here is my first problem. It says, Luke has 1/2 a can of soda. Okay, if he drinks 3/4 of the 1/2 of can of soda, will the total amount he drank be greater than or less than 1/2 of the can? Will the total amount he drank be greater than or less than 3/4 of the can? Okay, so let's kind of think about this. What I see here is he drinks 3/4 of the 1/2. So 3/4 of the 1/2 means I'm going to multiply. So 3/4 times 1/2. But I'm going to draw what this looks like. So Luke has 1/2 a can of soda. So this is the soda that Luke has. 1/2 the can. Okay, but then it says he drinks 3/4 of this. not of the whole can. He only drinks 3/4 of what was in here. So I'm going to cut this, what was left, into 3/4, and he only drinks this much. So of all this, he only drinks this much. That's all he drinks. So my question says, did he drink, it says, will the total amount be greater than or less than half? Well, didn't he drink less than half? Because there was half left and he didn't finish all half. So he actually drank less than half of the soda. Okay, so we could say like less than half. And then it says, will the total amount he drank be greater than or less than 3/4? Well, 3/4 would be a lot more than this, because 3/4 would have been if we divided it into fourths. So he also drank less than 3/4. So look at both of our factors. Our factors that we multiplied were 3/4 times 1/2, but we don't know what our product is yet, but we know it's less than 1/2 and it's less than 3/4. So we always think that multiplication means numbers get larger, but I'm saying our answer is going to be smaller than this. It's going to actually get smaller. Okay, if we wanted to see the actual answer, we couldn't leave our model like this. We would have to divide it all up. So if I divided what half was already missing, so they matched, then you could kind of see what your answer is going to be. So of the whole can, how much did he drink? Well, he drank 1, 2, 3 out of what was the whole can originally divided into. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he actually drank 3/8 of the can of soda. That would be our answer. So maybe take a look at this closely and see if you see a pattern that's going to start happening. See if you kind of see this rule. But our answer is 3/8 of the original can of soda is what he drank. Okay, let's see another one of these. This one's a little bit trickier. This one says, Sky has painted 2/3 of a board. He cut 2/5 of the 2/3 painted board. Will the cutoff piece of the painted board be greater than or less than 2/3 of the entire board? Will the cutoff piece of the painted board be greater than or less than 2/5 of the entire board? Okay, so right here I see 2/5 of 2/3, which means it's going to be 2/5 times 2/3. Okay, so let's try and draw this. He has painted 2/3 of a board. So here's my board. And the 3 means let's divide it into thirds, and he painted 2/3 of it. Okay, then it says he cuts off 2/5 of the 2/3. So each one of these I have to divide into fifths to cut them off, because I can't do it as a whole. So that part I divided into fifths, and he's going to cut off how much? 2/5 of them. 1, 2. He cut off. And then this one, let's divide it into fifths, and he's going to cut off 2/5. Okay. So he's only cutting off those parts. So it says, will the cutoff piece of the painted board be less than 2/3? Yes, this whole thing was 2/3 and he's only cutting off this. So it's definitely less than 2/3. It's not very much. And then it says, will it be less than 2/5? Yeah, 2/5 would be that if we had divided the whole board into fifths, it's less than 2/3 and 2/5. Okay. So to figure out what the whole answer is though, because I divided that third into fifths and I divided that third into fifths, I would have to divide this one into fifths too to make them all match. So how much did he really of the whole board cut off? Well, he only cut off those 4 pieces out of how many is the whole? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So he only cut off 4/15. Now look again and see if you see a pattern here. 2/5 times 2/3 is 4/15. So are you maybe seeing a way that you could get the answer without drawing the picture? Okay, let's try some together now. We are on page 170. Okay, and our first problem says, after the party, there was 1/3 of the cake left. If Mr. Walker eats 1/8 of the 1/3 of the cake, will the total amount to be eaten be greater than or less than 1/3 of the cake? Will the total amount eaten be greater than or less than 1/8 of the cake? Okay, so again, I see this 1/8 of 1/3.